Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here, back with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Monday, August the 19th, 2024. So here's a look at the latest GOES 16 True Color Visible Satellite Imagery provided by Dr. Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com. There's a link in the description below this video. And as we take a look at the entire Atlantic basin here, we do have Hurricane Ernesto probably not going to be a hurricane for much longer, as that eye has disappeared there. It's now more of a central dense overcast, as this is going to clip the very southeastern tip of Canada here in the Newfoundland and the Labrador area. Otherwise, much of the deep tropics down here in the Caribbean, in the southwestern Atlantic, looking nice and quiet. But if we look off here to the east, there are some more tropical waves coming off of Africa, with one of those that could become pretty intense once it emerges, because there's some of this dusty air that is moving further and further to the north. And when it gets far enough north, these tropical waves develop. They will have a much better opportunity of developing at least in very late August into early September. Also, really quickly, as we do take a look at the Eastern Pacific sector here, a lot of tropical wave activity. In fact, we have a tropical storm Gilma that is already developing. This is going to become our next hurricane as it moves in this general direction, because there's some stable air here. We'll see if that actually happens. We have another wave over here. This one could threaten Hawaii, possibly become our next hurricane perhaps. And then we got another tropical wave entangled up with all this deep convection that could become our next named storm eventually. We'll see if that actually happens. So very, very hyperactive right now in the Eastern Pacific, and when one basin is active, that explains why the Atlantic is quiet for right now. Now, of course, there's nothing to be concerned about in the Atlantic other than Ernesto going to clip the southeastern tip of Newfoundland and the Labrador in Canada. Nothing down here in the deep tropics for right now, but we all know what is coming. The light switch is going to flip on, and I do think it's going to flip on after the 28th. So again, from the 28th onward, we're going to have to really watch for tropical development, but especially from the 2nd and the 3rd of September, we could see hyperactive development in the Atlantic. When we take a look at the Eastern Pacific, here, definitely hyperactive. My gosh, we have 4 disturbances here. One is over here. This has a 90%. We have a 50 over here in the orange. We have another area here. This has a 20 to 30% chance of tropical development. And look at even Gilma's inside that yellow box there, painted from the NHC. And Gilma now is nearing hurricane intensity, as this is going to generally move off towards the northwest at about 10 to 15 miles an hour or two. Actually at 50 now, but not far away from becoming a hurricane within the next couple of days. So boy, hyperactive. And of course, we got to really look at the Central Pacific, because yes, our friends that do live in Hawaii, take note of this. This thing is going to turn and it's going to hit Hawaii head on. That's what some of the GFS model members are still showing. So anyone living in Hawaii, we definitely need to be monitoring this wave closely, as this could get very close. In fact, when we take a look at the 12Z GFS model forecast here, this model going really crazy and ballistic at showing our next tropical storm or hurricane hitting the big island of Hawaii by Monday and Tuesday next week. Let's take a look at that here on the forecast. We can see here, this has been really consistent. So consistency is always key here. And if we look at prior model runs, it's been all over the place, but generally thinking a tropical storm or hurricane here in the next possible 4 days. And look at what happens to this. This gets pretty intense at 977 millibars, and that's by Sunday, August 25th. And by Monday, early afternoon here for Hawaiian time for August the 26th, we do have a tropical storm or hurricane hitting the Big Island here. This would be really bad news for people that go here to the Big Island. Instead of thinking, oh, it's going to be a nice day, you're going to have to be worried about some heavy rainfall and some very intense winds. We'll see about that. If we look at the 06Z run, we can see this went much further to the north. But if we looked at the 0Z run from last night, look at it impacts Hawaii directly. Look at that. That wind field goes right over the island, bringing significant rain and significant wind to that area. So this is a system bear watch. So when looking at our latest ensemble forecast from the Euro model, and then we'll be looking at the GEFS ensemble forecast, we can see most of the members here bring this to the south of the big island of Hawaii. But remember, the fat side is always to the north when the system is going to the west like this. So if you are on the big island, you could get some really intense winds depending on how strong this actually gets. When looking at the GEFS ensemble forecast, you can see a whole different ball game because the GEFS ensemble thinks that there's going to be more members that show strengthening. So we got some oranges here, which indicate winds nearing hurricane force. That's why there's a big spread in the model guidance here versus Euro this way and the GEFS ensemble this way. So anyone, again, living on these islands needs to be paying close attention to this tropical wave. So now that we talked about the Central Pacific and the Eastern Pacific in the very brief part of this video, the rest of the video is all your importance here as we are tracking the Atlantic, the main development region, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the southwestern Atlantic, because this is where we really got to watch things very closely. Right now it's quiet for at least the next 7 to 10 days perhaps, but once we get past, again, the 28th is what I'm thinking right now, is what I'm still predicting after the 28th of August, maybe the 29th, the switch is going to get flipped on, and I think we're going to have a lot of hyperactive activity, perhaps, or not hyperactive, but you get the idea, very active indeed in the tropical Atlantic, especially after the 3rd of September. I think it's going to be go time instead. So the deep layer moisture plot indicates there is going to be a lot of dry air around over the next 12 hours. That's what most of the models indicate. That's why we have some stable air out there. Dust coming off of Africa, the Saharan air layer, really well illustrated. But guess what's going to happen? There's going to be all this moisture coming off of Africa. There has not been a whole lot of it recently, but now there's going to be a lot more of it coming off of Africa. So as we go forward in time here, by Wednesday, August 21st, here's a tropical wave. That's tropical wave number 1. As we go forward here, again, tropical wave 2 comes off. So again, that's 2 waves in a few days coming off of Africa. And then guess what? Here comes a third one coming off of Africa. But each time this happens, it gets more moist out here. So this is kind of the precondition of the atmosphere. Then here comes a 4th one. Here comes a 5th one. So maybe 6 tropical waves coming off of Africa over the next 15 days. That's a lot of waves in a short amount of time, or kind of in the medium to long range scope of things. But look at this. Not much dry air out here at all. A lot of the dry air is going away because once these waves come further south, they develop, they precondition the atmosphere. So that means the background state going to be very active, going to be very favorable, only more favorable than it is now. Even the European model is showing it here. This is the deep layer moisture plot indicating seriously the same thing that we just looked at on the GFS model, the deterministic forecast indicating more moisture here. This is again the 21st, the 22nd of August. And then as we go to the 24th, there's more moisture. And look at, by the very end of the model run, you can see all these relative humidities going up here in the western Atlantic into the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. Still some dry air here, but we got to understand this is only a 10-day forecast on the Euro model versus the GFS model, indicating pretty much the same thing like the Euro shows. Again, look at the similarity here, not much difference. But only the GFS goes a lot further and gives us a better idea that what may end up coming. And this is the 4th of September, so this is when we expect a lot of activity to break out rapidly in the deep tropical Atlantic. Also, when we take a look at our latest European ensemble prediction system here, that's what the EPS stands for. Here is the signal that we're looking for right now. So there is more tracks here indicating a tropical depression or storm, even a major hurricane here. That's not going to happen. We are not confident that far out, but you get the idea. We're looking for signals. We're looking for the evidence. And here's a forensic file evidence here indicating that we're getting into a busy period here. Once we get into the 29th of August, like I said previously, mark your calendar, the 29th of August and beyond, The tropics are going to get active. We got more waves coming off of Africa here potentially. These are too far north, but once they get further south, they have an opportunity of development. So with that being said, let's take a look now at our sea surface temperatures and their anomalies, because this just got more concerning. I mean, each passing day, these Gulf waters continue to warm up because of not much wind out there. So right now, as of yesterday, because this is delayed by a day, but it really doesn't matter. It's pretty much the same thing. Water temperatures here in the northern Gulf of Mexico are running in the 90s, between 90 to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. You can see it all in here, all this dark red, these pink colors, these purple colors. This is in the territory of the 90-degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And then down here, even a little bit of a swath here in the upper 80s, like 89 to 91 degrees, and even along the coast of Florida here, outrageously warm. And I'm just telling you folks, we don't have to have a major hurricane in the Gulf, but because these waters are so warm, later in the season, especially by the second half of September, I do believe into early October, when that second season of the monsoon gyre, the Central American gyre, gets going, if we get any favorability here in the Gulf of Mexico, we get a tropical wave or even a tropical storm moving into this area, and it spends only a couple of days in the Gulf, it could explode outrageously big into something that we have not seen at least since Laura, Michael, even Ian, and even some of our more famous hurricanes like Hurricane Katrina. So I'm not saying that to get more views, to get you all panicking and fear-mongering and anything. This is real concerns here. Water temperatures that are this warm will more than likely favor a unusually high consistency of rapid intensification hurricanes or tropical storms. Something that we're not used to seeing in the Gulf of Mexico like this because of how warm these waters are. And if you thought that was not serious enough, here's a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies here from the University of Miami, showing many areas here along the Gulf Coast here of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, running 2 to 3 degrees Celsius above average. That is pretty concerning, to say the least. Where the entire Gulf here, even the northwestern Caribbean, are running well above normal of at least almost 2 degrees Celsius above the long-term average. That is very, very outrageous. I mean, that is adding extra heat content into these oceans and just adding more fuel to the fire. So now, what about our potential minimum central pressure and intensity here? This is one of the websites that I will link in the description below this video leading to this. This is assuming, folks, and I want to make it clear in this video, I'm not trying to freak you all out and cause panic here. This is assuming that we have enough deep layer moisture in the atmosphere, okay? Moisture, you need a lot of it for these tropical waves to develop quickly into tropical cyclones and hurricanes. You also need very little wind shear, so you need shear of at least 5 knots or less for systems to really get going in a hurry in portions of the Gulf, the Caribbean, and much of the Atlantic. And also, you need extremely warm sea surface temperatures and very high to extreme values of upper ocean heat content. You need everything perfect. All right, if everything was perfect, and assuming this, the background state was favorable, sea surface temperatures were 100% favorable, everything lines right up as perfectly as the dawn of time, this is what you would possibly get. So say right now, based on sea surface temperatures, based on upper ocean heat content in the Caribbean, in the Gulf of Mexico, this could favor phenomenal, intense hurricanes, something that we have never seen at all in the entire face of the Atlantic. I mean, look at these blue colors here. This illustrates air pressure values as low. Again, the minimum central pressure potential here is as low as 880 to 890 millibars. Doesn't surprise me if some of these areas in here in the central blue color, darkest blue, are even as low as 850 or 860 millibars, which would be, oh my gosh, I could not even begin to think of how bad that would be. I don't know why I'm showing maps like this, but I want to kind of bring it out there because we don't view this very often for that reasoning, because people can misread this and be like, oh my gosh, Cat 5 coming. Oh my gosh, David's freaking us out, causing panic and everything. No, 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 I'm not trying to cause that, all right? This is, again, potential. The word potential means a possible, like the strongest these systems could even get. All right, so how strong would that be over the Gulf of Mexico? Well, one thing for sure, at least almost 200-mile-an-hour winds sustained that these systems could favor over the Gulf if they rapidly intensify, like we saw with Lee. Remember Beryl, those things blew up very quickly. We got Laura, we had Michael, just keep that in mind. Harvey, Sally, Ian, just think about those systems in your head for a second, all right? And take a look at this. I mean, pretty much the entire Gulf, the Northwestern Caribbean, the Western Atlantic is warm enough to favor very intense, violent Category 4, Category 5 hurricanes if the background state and everything comes perfectly together for such an event like that. That is possible because of all the upper ocean heat content that we are seeing. And you can see why here. This is the upper ocean heat content. Look at all those reds, those dark reds over Jamaica, over the Northwestern Caribbean, the Central Caribbean. I mean, these are outrageously warm. And look at over here in the Gulf of Mexico, the highest we have ever seen anything. This doesn't look like a whole lot of upper ocean heat content for the Gulf, but believe me, it truly is. I'm going to try looking for the post and I'll show it to you as soon as I can. And of course, back here to the west, we are seeing a lot of, or east, I should say, excuse me, a lot of upper ocean heat content too to contend with. Now, of course, all of that on top of favorable conditions really begs the question of how serious will this hurricane season get? I think we're going to start seeing things really get nasty and ugly for the Atlantic once we go into about, again, the 29th of August, as early as that, but it could wait to as late as maybe September the 3rd or the 4th. But I think in September, we're going to see a season we have never seen before, I believe. And it's all because of all this upward motion over Africa, over India, over the maritime continent. Look at all the sinking motion over the Western or the Eastern Pacific and much of, say, the Central Pacific. And that is why I think the Atlantic, once it gets going, folks, it's kind of like starting an engine. It's like going like this. And once it gets going, once the engine turns over, it will idle and it will just keep running until you turn off the engine. In other words, and that's where we're standing at right now. It's like waiting for the cap to break, waiting things to explode in the Atlantic. And to prove you that I'm correct here is some Twitter posts. I'm going to show you one more after this if I could find the person. Craig Sensor from CCCM. He's a chief meteorologist out of the Royal Caribbean. I'm going to put a link to his Twitter because I want to cite these people because they do some great work. And I want to read this all to you. This is really, really important. All right. I'm not doing this to get more views or anything. We are entering the beginning of the peak hurricane season lasting through mid-October. And while much of the Atlantic remains warm with above average sea surface temperatures, it also remains mostly quiet. It appears one reason is because the African easterly waves, tropical waves, keep entering the Atlantic fairly far north. Aha! When these things get too far north, they enter, so like, let's just say they enter this area, that is too far north. We need these tropical waves to form further south down here. And once they begin to form that far south and they get a lot of moisture, they generate their own weather conditions. Believe me, you have not seen a season yet. And that's what we're waiting for. When these waves get further south, it's go time. Instead of these waves being further north, that is kind of tricking us as forecasters. And I think we're going to be in some serious business once we go into September. The waves don't develop over the colder water and are kept in check by the lingering dry air across much of the western tropical Atlantic. This may begin changing the last week of August. Sorry, I misread that. So changing the last week of August, so again, that 29th, 28th time frame, I believe, is when all this dry air will be gone in no time. And then when we go and zoom down or scroll further down here, the last, all right, so very important here, and it just, okay, here we go. So the last of higher latitude waves may exit this week, helping to moisten the atmosphere. and help seed the way for lower latitude waves. There's a word, lower latitude waves expected to emerge late week, so the last week of August. Maybe then the Atlantic will come to life with vengeance and has been predicted by many. Regardless, we're entering the peak of hurricane season, but each day without a storm is a day closer to the end of hurricane season, but not a time to let our guard down yet. Sorry if I did that, I undercasted that, but now I'm looking at all these sources and I'm starting to connect the dots here that we're not done yet. And I believe, again, once the engine turns over completely, right now it's kind of like you're trying to get the engine to start, but it won't start. But once things get started, it's not going to stop possibly until early or mid-December perhaps. Okay, I just found the sources to back up my claim about the Gulf of Mexico being outrageously warm. You can see it right here. You're seeing in front of your screen. Ocean heat content in the Gulf of Mexico is reaching or about to breach the all-time record of being the hottest and warmest ever recorded. And you can see well above the normal 2013 to 2023 average. Man, that is pretty stout and concerning to think about. And another one here from Andrew Moore, we will be wave watching starting this week and late next week as well. A pair of waves shown below haven't been developing into much out of the models as of yet, but conditions largely favorable. We are nearing the peak of hurricane season. So, in other words, models think, based on all the dry air and all the shenanigans that we're seeing, that these waves do not develop. That could be an understatement as we go further down the road. I think one of these waves, at least the southernmost one that he circled in, has some greater potential here of developing into a tropical depression or storm later down the road, probably by the very end of August and early September. So that is bear watching as well. Again, all these Twitter links will be in the description because I want to cite these people because you all out there that make these posts possible are doing your job at providing honest, accurate information. So I'll be putting those links in the description below this video. But anyways, if you did enjoy today's detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion, mainly for the Atlantic, we did add some central and east pack in there in today's update. Please do not forget to hit the red subscribe button right now if you haven't already. You guys have been doing really good at supporting the channel. I can't wait to get some merchandise out here on the channel as well. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so, hitting the like button, and sharing this video with your family and friends on social media. And never forget to also ring the bell icon to get notifications every time I do have a post out. And since things are about to get active, we're probably going to be doing updates every day until the season settles down, which won't be until December or even November. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will be streaming live discussing the tropics tomorrow evening right around 5 or 6 o'clock. Tomorrow's a live stream and not a video version. All right, see you back here tomorrow.